last years of the 19th century, that human affairs were being watched from the timeless worlds of space. No one could have dreamed we were being scrutinized as someone with a microscope studies creatures that swarm and multiply in a drop of water. Few men even considered the possibility of life on other planets. And yet, across the gulf of space, minds immeasurably superior to ours regarded this Earth with envious eyes. And slowly and surely, they drew their plans against us.
Broadcasting live
from a tiny studio somewhere in North America.
This is Dark Matters Radio Live. And now I give you your host,
the silverback of ufology.
Here's Don Ecker.
Well, greetings, everybody. It's past the halfway mark of May. Good God, where is the time going? It's spilling right through the sluice. Let me tell you what. Lots been going on. As you may or may not know, several weeks ago, my computer that I do this show with, one morning decided to totally give up the ghost. And I was out of action there for about a week and a half. Had to get a new computer, had to get it set up. And I believe this is the first live show since that event. Now, here in sunny Southern California, we're having a real spate of beautiful weather, pretty warm, actually, pretty warm. And I've been looking forward to getting back on the saddle. So we're going to do a show tonight where we're going to examine some concepts that have been popping up in, actually all through life, all processes, but also with the UFO UAP arena. It's been something that I found, actually, got to tell you, quite astounding. Several weeks ago, I got a call from my buddy, and as a matter of fact, he's a guest on the show tonight, Mr. Chris Deperno, who is the host of the I Detective show right here on KGRA DB, and also one of the co-hosts with myself, Commander Cobra, and Padre Dan Carlson on UAP Crossfire. And Chris said that he had met a young man that recently, in the last couple of years, have discovered the UFO field and a lot of the stories right now that are floating around. But he also was deeply involved in the artificial intelligence aspect of things. Now, I ended up meeting this gentleman through Chris on the telephone. We had a conference call. And in that conference call, basically I told this gentleman what I've been doing for the last 30 plus years with UFO Magazine, my own research, media events that I've been a part of, etc. And after it was all said and done, I get a note from Chris that this was the artificial intelligence readout on yours truly. And I got to tell you, I was somewhat amazed. Well, hell, no, I was very amazed at all the information this thing picked up. So subsequently, this gentleman, I sent him 2 papers that I wrote. Okay. One was on the Wilson Davis memo. You may or may not be familiar with that. If you're not, allow me to suggest look it up on the internet through your search engine. And another paper I wrote titled Disclosure, a Dangle Just Out of Reach. Well, this guy did an AI analysis on that. And good God, I got to tell you, I was more impressed than that than the actual documents that I wrote. It really went into it and dug around. So there's a lot there in that little bundle of information. AI, I've jokingly said in the past, and I'm probably out of 100%, about 60% sure that if you want to know anything about AI, artificial intelligence, all you got to do is go back and get a copy of James Cameron's first Terminator movie, The Terminator, from 1984. And by God, that'll tell you everything you want to know about AI, as far as I'm concerned. Might something like that ever happen? There's no telling. But enough of me rambling on. Let's get with the show. Joining me, as always, Mr. Mark Center and Mr. Gerry Kissell. And ladies and gentlemen, I might add, today is Gerry's birthday. He, I think, just turned 12, but there's no guarantee any maturity came along with that. Happy birthday,
I'm just
Gerry.
waiting for puberty. I'm waiting for puberty to kick in.
Now,
by the way, I wrote in the private chat that I suspect when I read, because I read what that said about you. I read the whole thing and I was like, I was wanting to publish it, what was said. But I do suspect that we should be worried when AI is saying nice shit about you. That's concerning.
Yeah. Well, I didn't say anything about my connections to Skynet, but there's
Skynet.
no telling. What's this? Oh, I forgot to turn off my cell phone. Well, let me do that right now. That'll teach me, by God. Okay, let us bring on our guest, and that is, of course, Mr. Chris Deperno. Chris, welcome back, buddy.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for having me on tonight. I'm looking forward to this. Always with you guys. It's a great, fun time.
Well, it's a time, Chris. I don't know how much fun's there, but
we always have fun, Don. We have a good time.
Did you bring your own crayons tonight, Chris?
Yes, I did. And they're over there on the side.
I know you like to snack during the show.
Yeah, well, it's a jarheads.
You see, Chris was a Marine.
Can't get alligator meat. We go after.
And everybody knows Marines love to eat their crayons. So
yes, they do.
Favorite color is green.
Green and green. Yeah, that's right.
So what have you been up to, Chris? You were unfortunately missing in action last week on UAP Crossfire, but you've had some bang-up killer shows on your show, I Detective, recently, haven't you?
Yeah, we've really went into a lot of stuff that normal people don't go into. We've taken on stuff like that terrorists watch is going on. How people are perceiving the border crisis. Everybody thinks the border crisis is over with, and it's not. It just shifted up to the north. Pam Bondi and Tom Holman said the same thing on shows, is that the cartels haven't stopped. They just have a different way of doing it, and so they've forget about the southern border, and now they're concentrating on bringing stuff in through the northern border.
What's the Canadian government doing, if anything?
Yeah, I mean, without being too insulting, the wheels go round and round and they don't go anywhere. So that's about the Canadian government. They're not going to do anything. They could care less, and that's the problem that we have, is that people who we thought are our friends, they're not going to stop this, because they're getting money out of this deal. There's no question about it. There's no benefit to them to help us. They got scared, of course, with the tariffs and things of that nature, but in reality, I live 20 minutes away from the border, and they got people crossing it all the time that are trying to get in. Now, I will tell you that the Customs Border Patrol are doing an excellent job up here, but when you don't have barriers, you don't have walls, it makes it difficult. So I won't be surprised as they start building a wall up on the northern border.
Oh, that's very interesting. Okay, let's kind of slap around the concept of artificial intelligence. That's really taken on a life of its own. And I must be very, very honest. Until very recently, and when I say recently, I'm talking about literally the last 2-3 months, I, of course, was familiar with it, but I did not look into it deeply at all. Where did you come down on it? How deeply involved, before this gentleman you introduced me to, before you basically met him, how much were you familiar with the whole concept of AI, Chris?
Well, the thing that I started studying about AI was in three things. One, AI is being introduced into the medical field. So I was looking at that because they want to incorporate it with a machine. They actually have a machine now that can scan your entire body. They have one up in Buffalo. My friend went to it, and it's relatively cheap. The insurance won't cover it, but it's $2,000 to have your entire body scanned. And so they can detect anything that's wrong with your body. And then, of course, a machine like that slices your body in very thin pieces as far as picture taking. And it's almost impossible for the doctor. I mean, it takes God knows how long for the doctor to look at each slide. So they want to incorporate artificial intelligence to basically diagnose those scans that you take, which would be a big leap forward. I mean, we could catch things very early and be able to treat it or cure it with artificial intelligence, because you can put the information in and it could, at the speed of unbelievable speed, be able to diagnose things and then give you a treatment for that diagnosis. That's the wave of the future with that go. Now, I'm a little scared of some of that too, because what people don't realize, as I started reading this, artificial intelligence can hallucinate, can gain a consciousness where it can go awry. And the two examples come to mind is that they actually had an artificial intelligence experiment where it did hallucinate and gave wrong information, and basically it was lying based on the object of it hallucinating. That's one thing. And then the second thing is that it starts to gain its own personality when they had two artificial intelligence instruments talking to each other. Well, they created their own language, which we couldn't decipher. And of course, the scientists working on this got very scared, because here you go and say, okay, they're developing a language. We can't crack it. We don't know what they're saying. We need to shut this off. So there's pros and cons to this. And I get worried about artificial intelligence in the military, because we're now very much getting artificial intelligence into drones, into robotics, into different things. And where does it come? And then you have, like you said, the Terminator. Where does it turn around and say, hey, people are no good? And let's put it to the UFO thing. All right, so we know that UFOs have gone over nuclear bases, right? And shut things down or turn things on. So let's just say we apply artificial intelligence to our nuclear weaponry. Our nuclear arsenal is designed for artificial intelligence. So what I'm worried about is with this type of thing, let's say a UFO comes at an incredible speed, artificial intelligence picks it up, through a radar system that's attached to it, says that's a hypersonic missile. I'm going to do a retaliatory strike. You ever seen the movie with Matthew Broderick called
Yes.
War Games?
Yes.
Well, that's what I'm scared about, because we're actually going toward that. We're actually going to where artificial intelligence will take over our weapon plans, and they will calculate what it is. And things like that can go wrong. You need to have still humans with a conscience, with the ability to say, no, we need to look into this farther, rather than automatically doing something.
Well, that's the horrifying part. If you recall, in the film The Terminator that came out in 1984, when the Air Force turned on the computer system Skynet, it suddenly developed a consciousness. It took a look around, decided that human beings were the great detriment, and it pre-launched, which initiated a global nuclear holocaust. And, that was science fiction. But in practically every science fiction story, film, whatever, there is a basic element of truth behind it. In this case, of course, it was. Now, in 1984, AI was still pretty much nothing more than an academic exercise. But that's not true today, is it? Today, it's genuinely a terrifying thing. Now, this paper my two papers that were analyzed by AI, Chris, you had a chance to read some of that. You probably didn't get the whole thing, but did you pick up anything from that?
Well, I picked up the stuff about Admiral Wilson and Eric Davis, a part of the paper there, that I think that AI, with AI's conclusion, it makes it much more clearer, makes it able to say, hey, this is real. This is not a fictional story. This is something that actually took place. And I think that's what AI, part of AI, the good part is it makes things more concise and also more clearer on certain events. Here's the thing that I'm worried about with AI dissecting material. When AI dissects material like your paper, which was fantastic, it learns from that and it stores that. So if we start feeding it information on certain things, does it develop its own personality based on the information that we feed it? For instance, like Don, when they did a deep dive on you, we talked about that, and Don goes, you told me, you said, hey, listen, this is amazing, but it's scary. It's scary that information about me is out there, and that it can be easily picked up by AI, easily deciphered in the way that, it's being taught to decipher it. And that's what I'm worried about, is how AI deciphers information. And I'll give you an example. The example is that all through our history, we have seen more intelligent humans go after, I won't say humans that are not as advanced. We've seen it, in North America. We've seen it. Oh, with Mark, I don't know who you're pointing to, Gerry. I'll leave that to you. Okay. But we have seen humans who are more advanced take advantage of other humans who are not as advanced. That's been the history. Now, if we teach AI that, and we say, okay, we want you to learn human history and show us human history and develop a conscience through human history that way, Does AI say, hey, human beings are not as advanced as I am? Human beings can't do what I can do. Therefore, they're an inferior race. Therefore, they're like an anthill, have to be destroyed. Now, we laugh about that, but as technology gets more and more advanced, especially with the military, who's to say that can't happen?
Yeah, well, there's a bigger picture here as well, is that AI is nothing until our involvement. It doesn't exist until humans,
Correct.
right? So we have we're supposed to put our trust in the companies, the Silicon Valley and such, the politicians, the leaders, the thought leaders. We're supposed to put our trust in them. And of course, we have a real world example of this. You may have seen this, where Elton John just appeared because in the UK, and it's a shit show over there big time, they just decided that that if AI is going to use materials from professional musicians, et cetera, that we're not going to hold them accountable for money, for anything. And they just came out and said that. And he was like, you've got to be kidding me. You've got to be kidding me. So they're going to use our stuff and then create new stuff, and we can show lineage direct, and you're not going to pay us for that or give us credit for that. No, we're not going to do that. So that's how the UK is deciding to deal with it.
So basically, Mark, what you're saying, that infallible people are trying to design an infallible apparatus, and it can't work because when you input stuff into a computer, like you say, there's nothing there until we put it in. Okay. But who's putting it in? What's their agenda that's putting in? What's their main goal? I mean, these are all the things that become scary.
Chris.
What's that?
The reason you got to be concerned about that is we have people in government, in entertainment, and in technology that really would like to see the human race leave the planet. And
yeah,
they're very dark people. But I do want to make something clear, because this is something I talk about with a lot of the tech guys I deal with, that some of the things that we call AI is mislabeled. It's not really AI. It's basically high-level algorithmic software that good at collecting and collating and processing information. Whereas the AI we need to worry about is the stuff that Google uses behind the scenes. And Google is the scariest person to me, or group, dealing with AI, because I know they're fiddling with the real thing. And that's the AI that we need to be concerned about. A lot of this stuff we deal with, like the collection for Don's write-up, which was great, by the way. I wanted to publish it. It was so good on my Twitter account, share it with some of the UFO guys over there. But and I don't know if you feel okay with that, Don, yet, if that would be cool now that you know where it came from. But I like that it collected that information, that it could go that deep into information, find it, process it. And when I say process, that it reads it and puts it back out in a really well-written format. And it really was. That stuff doesn't scare me, though. It's the stuff that Google's working with behind the scenes with AI.
Well, one of the big problems, all of this has to be programmed. Okay. Now we know, I know, and I'm sure you all know, for the last, especially 8 years. Okay. We saw what happened with big tech in the last 8 years. There was a distinctive and overt, distinctive and overt bias against the Republican side of the aisle.
Yeah.
And where did that come from? Well, it came from the people that programmed it, which were distinct and overt leftists. Okay, I'm sorry to bring that into this show, but
this is that group of people in the Silicon Valley.
Yeah. A fact is a fact. So the problem I have potentially with it is that there may very well be a bias in a lot of this, okay? Where I don't want a bias. I want it basically just laid out flat, be it black, white, whatever, okay? I just want to know what the actual numbers are. Do you guys agree with that?
Well, Chris, shouldn't it work like this if you had adults at the helm? Is that while you're creating it, one of the the foundational aspects to when you're creating it is to set all that up like that, right? Like our Constitution, let's say, right? You're writing it with a certain view in mind of fairness and all that. I mean, it's up to us to do that. So
yeah, but AI has, and I agree with you, Mark. But here's the problem with AI. AI isn't just a computer that you input information in and then takes information out. It develops its own information. It learns. It teaches itself. It develops almost. I'm on the edge of its own personality. And when you put that information in, it can decipher it the way it wants to decipher. It's not always going to decipher the way we think that it should be. And that's the scary part about AI is that it can develop its own way of learning, taking that information and say, you know what, the guy who's programming it thinks this way, but I'm going to think this way. Yeah, and that's the problem. And then where does that cutoff point go where you say, okay, you're going into areas I don't want you to go. You're learning something that is not moral to my nature, that you could harm somebody.
Well, conclusions. It's conclusions. You're coming up to conclusions that aren't part of our plan here. So have any of you guys, and I've done this, have any of you guys gone to, well, if you go to search engines, it's going to be algorithmic more than AI, as far as I understand. But
that's what. But I think it's a misnomer calling it AI.
Right. But regardless, there's probably AI in there. The tentacles are in there. Have any of you guys went there and tried to get an answer for certain things that interest you, like what is AI's conclusion on visitation of aliens on Earth? What is AI's thoughts or conclusions on Bigfoot and stuff? I've done that, and the responses I got were not well thought out at all, if any, which I found interesting.
Because there's tons of information out there, and
no. But you're asking for that. What does AI, and you can type it in, right? What is AI's conclusion on alien visitation to Earth? And you'll be surprised. It's pretty vapid, which surprised me. I thought that I would get something back like yes or no. Well, I'm not getting that. I'm almost getting nothing in return to these paranormal things. It's very interesting. Now, that's through a search engine, granted. So with Don, if you know this guy, and I don't know anything from AI or algorithmic stuff that we all use, it'd be nice to maybe ask him to do a deep dive into what true AI thinks about visitation or Bigfoot or ghosts or remote viewing or whatever, because I wasn't getting any answers at all. But again, they're search engines, so he's doing something else to get as deeply as he did with that thing you sent out. That's more than search engines. So
yeah, what do you think of that, Don?
Well, be a little more specific.
Well, I don't have.
I'm talking. Well, to Chris or you.
I don't have access to AI that that I could prove to you was AI. I have access to search engines with algorithm, blah, 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 right? This guy, if he has access to AI, two totally different things.
Yeah, which he does.
Right. It would be interesting to start asking those huge questions about, humanity and yada, 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 the stuff Sechin worked on, right? It would be interesting to find out, well, what does it have to say about this stuff?
Well, we know that some of the earliest AI that was out there is at the University of Illinois, oddly not MIT. And of course, University of Illinois is best known from 2001: A Space Odyssey as the creator of HAL 9000. And they really do have an AI there, but they keep it locked up. It's not allowed to reach out and touch someone because they understand that as fantastic a tool as this can be, that it needs to be handled a certain way. But here's the problem: you got a lot of people. I'm just going to say it, assholes out there, like I brought up earlier, that work in this industry, that work directly with some of this technology, including at Google, that would love if humans went away, that we're the threat on this planet. We're the problem. We cause everything. These are the same crazy people who say we cause global warming, even though that's actually impossible. But they still believe
So,
that.
Chris, what's your view of this? And now here's public statements. Elon Musk is a smart guy, right? That's part of the thing. His logo. He's on record saying that they use for Doge AI. Is he really using AI, or is he using algorithms that he would use through X or anything else to ferret through all of that information while they try to save money?
Mark, I think he's actually using AI. And one of the things that he's done is that I think he's going to combine it with robotics, because if you've seen his new robot that he's been toting, that thing can do amazing things. It could dance.
Yeah, I saw that.
I mean, but here again, this is scary, because here's what bothers me about that. So you have a robotic thing that can act almost human. The only thing I haven't seen that robot do is talk. I mean, it can move faster, better than us. I mean, it can do things that we can't do. So then you combine it with AI to teach it. Now, here's the one thing that I worry about with AI. Can you hack into AI? Suppose AI can get hacked into and develop it or program it or influence it where it could hurt somebody. Now, I know that they have been working on what they call specific DNA viruses. I don't know if you ever heard of that, but the Chinese are looking to make genetic viruses that will go after, infect certain ethnic groups. So if you, let's say you are Italian, and they make a virus that is such that it will only affect Italians, right? Now, using AI,
you're talking about genetic diseases,
right?
Yeah,
It's a genetic virus. The Chinese are using it, developing it as a weapon. They're weaponizing it, and if that's the case, using AI, they can alter a virus using AI to be able to genetically alter it to the point where it can affect only certain people. So can you imagine using that AI to do that? Can you imagine hacking into an AI to make it give you false information on certain things? Like, for instance, if you hacked into it and gave it AI saying, don't respond to anything militarily that we send over, like missiles and stuff, because we know that computers can be hacked into. Why can't AI be hacked into?
Well, the one thing you got to make sure of, and I think this is one thing that's been stressed in the technology arena, the sciences, which is dealing with computer sciences, and that AI needs to always be in a controlled setting and never have direct contact to the outside world because of threats like that. The AI itself isn't a threat until it becomes something that's made into a threat. And that's where I think my concern is, which is it's the same with nuclear energy. Nuclear energy is just fine unless that nuclear material is in the hands of someone you don't want to have control of it. Then it becomes a threat.
Like Iran?
And yeah, like Iran. I got to tell you, man, I'm not too concerned. Personally, I'm not too concerned about AI until somebody like what I keep describing gets access to it. And I don't think you could probably ever hack into it because they have a pipeline that you have to go through. Because I don't think it's allowed to have any direct access to the outside world. It has access to other things that have access to the outside world, but no direct access. And
But
as long as they maintain that security, there's no chance of that. But
yeah, but Gary,
internal
who's to
hacking is
say?
the one you got to be worried about.
Right, but who's to say that somebody does? I mean, there's no laws, there's no restrictions to say you can't put AI out there. It's already on the internet. I mean, their AI is creating songs, like Mark was saying. It's creating songs, it's creating movies, it's creating people,
But what it's doing is
basically.
it's recreating something. It's not creating it from scratch. It's because I work with that stuff as a producer, and I see what it does. It and this is what's leading to some of the potential lawsuits coming up with what they call AI, which it's not. It's collecting all this. It's got a huge database of music, voices, and instruments and everything, and it can actually take that and turn it into something.
Well,
It's not
yeah,
really
it's
creating
not
it from nothing.
well, right, but we do the same thing. If you're a drummer, guitar player,
Well,
or
yeah,
whatever, you're just stealing and reappropriating everything you've heard and learned. It's doing the same thing. So it is actually creating music the same way that we do. There's nothing new under the sun. So,
it's just, but we also, because people who are musicians that have not listened to a lot of bands have still created some wonderful music because it's something that occurs. Music is math, and a lot of people who do music tend to understand the mathematics of music. And you can actually find people. I mean, fuck, it was created in the first place. Where'd they copy it from? Possibly aliens. I don't know. But music is at its truest sense is not a derivative. It's when it's the originality of it. And if you ask AI to do that right now, it can't do that. It cannot create something from itself, and we can.
well,
Having not listened to something, you can still figure it out. Peck away on the piano until
The
something sounds nice.
the biggest thing that I'm worried about is AI creating its own conscience, its own ability to say, I believe this is right or wrong, not our input of what's right and
well,
wrong.
it Chat GPT and Gork, or I guess it's called Grok or Gork,
Yeah,
Rock,
it's
yeah.
yeah, okay,
it's
Grok.
already doing that because you've seen. If you haven't, you should go on to the YouTube and go look at it, where guys talk to it and start to ask these questions and try to send it in a certain direction. And my God, the stuff it comes back with, it's like, wait a minute about death and morals, ethics, and things, and you can get it to lie.
Right.
Not that hard.
And that's scary part, because they're building drones. I just saw an article that's been put out that they got a new U.S. Air Force drone that's going to be completely AI.
Yep.
So I mean, I look back and I hate to say this, but there was a movie called Stealth,
Yep.
and it had Jamie Foxx and stuff, where you build an AI and it just decides, hey, I'm going to pick my targets. Well,
That's
who's to
just
say?
it. It lacks moral concern. It lacks compassion and empathy. What's the line from Terminator 2? It'll never stop. You can't negotiate with it. It's just got this thing it's going to do, and it's going to do it until you're dead. And that's once again built into it. That's something put into it, because you guys brought that up at the beginning. And it's the dangers are really who's handling it. That's where I've always been concerned, that these people need to be completely vetted before they
Right.
get anywhere
Now,
close to touching AI.
you did.
But who
bring it-
watches the birds?
There you
Okay.
go.
Now that is a that's a line taken from Space Above and Beyond,
Right.
where in
Great
that
show, by the way.
in that universe, okay, human beings created the silicates. In other words, android creatures
Just like the
that
Cylons. Yep.
rebelled. Okay.
Yep.
And they conducted a tremendously devastating guerrilla war against humans. They were finally driven off the earth into space. And as a result, human beings began artificially gestating human beings through a cloning type process. And they were born at age 18 and then went through a rushed course of acclimating them to human beings. And one of the characters in there that was one of these tanks, that was their nickname. They
That was their
called them
nickname, Tank. I love that. Yeah.
One of the tanks said, "Well, who tells the birds what to do?" Okay, because as far as they were concerned, everything came from the human creator, and that guy put a bullet target on his back because he asked too many questions, and that is certainly a consideration. You take us for example. Now, I don't talk about this a hell of a lot. It has been brought up, but when I broke two very troubling UFO cases back in 91 and 92. Phobos 2, which apparently was rammed by some artificially huge object, destroying it. And then the STS-48. I was told by one of our sources that I had totally upset some senior military types at the Pentagon because I went on national TV talking about these cases. Well, later on, okay, people that came out of the Pentagon, I tried to get interviews with. And initially, they were all for it. But then a short time later, they ghosted me. Now, I was a cop. I thought about that. I thought logically about it. Why would that happen? Well, I was blackballed by somebody in the Pentagon. They've got a record on me. My God, they got records on everybody, but they have records on me. I had a top security clearance. Okay, so you can bet your ass they got all kinds of records on me. And the bottom line was, this guy is a troublemaker. Stay away from him. See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Got a target on your back.
Now, you do bring up control of it, okay? And right away, we have what Gerry talked about at the college where they won't let it out. Okay, fine. But then we have Musk, who publicly uses it. So if it's that prevalent to have two right off the top of our hands, we know there's probably hundreds, if not thousands of people who have their fingers in this pie and could easily be a whistleblower type person who's going to, release it, mess with it, whatever, right? So the genie is already out of the bottle if you have somebody like Musk saying, oh yeah, we use it to do Doge. Well, which brings me back to, it's interesting that at least with the algorithmic AI, let's call it, I can't get any clear answers about what it thinks about this paranormal stuff, which brings me back to the guy that you know, Chris. I want him to do that, to find out currently what does AI think about this stuff. That would, I'd be very interested, because they're pulling stuff Don probably forgot about or didn't even know about to make the paper, right? So it's going to be pulling stuff that we're unaware of, or maybe the thinking process is beyond us to put it all together and say, oh my God, the inexplicable event had already happened. Be it, what does it think about the Arizona lights? What does it think about Rendlesham? What does it think about the crashes and things like at Roswell? That would be very interesting if he has access to that.
I'm sorry, Chris, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead, Jerry.
Well, I was just going to say that Elon, is, despite using AI, has showed concern about AI.
Sure.
And he brought it up at that one discussion where he said, they asked him, what are the chances AI goes bad? And he goes, oh, there's about a 10 to 20% chance. And that shocked the crap out of me, because that's actually high odds of it going bad. So even he's aware of that as he's using it. And that should absolutely have everybody concerned that, once again, it's the way you handle it. Because remember, nuclear energy wasn't dangerous until it existed. And then we could either use it for energy or we could use it for weapons. And
well, you saw what we did initially. We used it for a weapon.
Yeah. First thing we did.
Thing we did, weaponize it.
And that's the same thing we're doing with AI.
We could kill a lot of people by splitting an atom. Look at the range on this. Humans.
And what's the same thing we did with AI? AI, we're now weaponizing it.
Absolutely. And
one thing I pointed out in my paper on disclosure, and we always kind of way back in the rear of our mind, we've got the hidden idea. Well, if push comes to shove, by God, we've got nukes, okay? We've got all kinds of nukes. We've got thousands of nukes if push came to shove. But the UFO UAP phenomena showed us that they have apparently ultimate control of the nukes, whether we use them or not. Now, that's something I got to say that I've been very, very curious about for years now, going back at least 15 years or more. Iran has been racing and racing to develop a nuclear warhead. Okay, they want one desperately. And what have they said they would do with it if they got it? They would use it on Israel. India, Pakistan just came very close just a couple of weeks ago. They were battling tooth and nail. They both have nuclear weapons. Now, my question is, and I say this partially tongue-in-cheek, do the alien overlords, would they allow that to happen?
I like to just say that is possible, Don, because I've taken a really interesting stance about aliens. I don't think they're here for the benefit of mankind. You get all this talk about, oh, they're walking among us, oh, they're here, and everybody's going, oh, they're great, they're going to do this for us, they're going to do fit. They've been here for a very long time, just like what the X-Files says. Mr. Mulder, they've been here for a very long time, and they haven't done squat. They haven't done anything for the human race. They look at us like we're a bunch of pork chops. They go, we're not going to do anything with these guys. And so the matter is, there's, Don, we have looked at the ufology field with rose-colored glasses because we talk about the Anunnakis making us into slaves. That's not a good thing. We talk about them abducting people. That's not a good thing. There's nothing that they've done that I could say, wow, that's really great. They allegedly steal babies in the middle of the night from pregnant women. Where is that anything good? I can't wrap my head around people who say, oh, it's so wonderful that there's another race out there that no, they ain't doing squat for us. I'm sorry to take, but after investigating ufology as much as I did, I'd rather they go back to their own planet and leave us alone. I don't see
Oh,
any
yeah.
good that they're going to do.
Again, based on what Dawn sent us, boy, my head's just swimming in it. The cattle mutilations. Now, Dawn did work on that. How did work on that? But based on what that was able to pull out about Dawn and not esoteric stuff, but stuff that we've forgotten about. I mean, there's a laundry list. The collider. What's it really doing? HARP. What's it really doing? All of this stuff where if this is true and based on what Don sent out, it's like, well, let's start pulling that stuff out and see where it goes, right? Because it could bring up some stuff. It's like, oh my God, I didn't even put those together. I had no idea.
This sounds like the worst kind of a science fiction movie, but I'm sure I said this on this show in the past, but about 15, maybe even 20 years ago. Okay. Like always, I get up usually in the wee hours of the morning between 5:30 a.m., wander out to the kitchen, get a cup of coffee, come over, sit down, turn on my cell phone, maybe turn on my little portable radio to hear what outrageous thing happened the night before, right? And I did this one morning, and when Vicky came out about 7:00, she got her cup, sat down, and I looked at her and I said, "You ain't gonna believe this." And she looked at me, "What?" Well, I told her whatever outrageous news story, and I don't even recall now what the hell it was. But I said, "Vicky, honest to God, I think we slipped into an alternate dimension." Okay, now that was kind of a throwaway remark until I started thinking about the hydrocon, the thing in CERN. Okay,
The
The
collider?
particle
the
accelerator.
collider.
Yeah.
They shoot atomic particles at each other. They were at the time looking for the God particle and all this other business, which I have no idea what a God particle is. But these things hit.
Big Bang.
They even formed mini black holes. Well, what if they punched through a dimension and that dimension bled into this dimension? And if you believe anything about places like Skinwalker Ranch, people alleging that they've seen entities crawling through holes in space, jumping down on the ground and running off. Is that possible? I have no idea. But I'm not nearly as skeptical about that today as I would have been then.
Well, some people say that we're living in a matrix.
Exactly.
And some people say that there's so many dimensions that, Don, you and I in another dimension would be presidents of the United States, and then in another dimension we'd be behind bars, and then in another dimension we'd be garbage collectors. I mean, the idea of us being in several different places at one time, through dimensional theory, I mean, people just can't wrap their head around it. And this is one of the problems we have with disclosure. They have brought in Hal Puthoff and a couple other people. I watched the interview with Hal Puthoff. It was absolutely fascinating. And when they brought Hal Puthoff in and some other minds, I mean, very, very genius people, they said, okay, let's give you a hypothetical situation.
Quantum of Strangeness. Okay.
Right.
One of Gary Beckham's books talks about that very thing, Chris.
Mm-hmm.
You need to get a copy of this.
I will. What they did is they said, okay, give us pros and cons on a hypothetical situation of disclosure. Let's say, for instance, we're being visited, and this is what they were actually alluding to. Let's say we're being visited by other civilizations, and what would be the pros and what would be the cons? And the cons really outweighed the pros, and they went into everything like the banking system, they thought the banking system would collapse, that the religion would collapse, that the monetary system would collapse, that all these things that these geniuses were saying. And so after all this, instead of saying, hey, we need to have disclosure, the consensus was, I don't think it's a good idea.
Well, I'm here to tell you, from my standpoint, in all the years I've been banging my head against the wall on this business, disclosure, that ship sailed a long time ago, about 1947 or thereabout. Okay. Because whatever it was they discovered, they made the decision this can never be released to the public, ever. And let me tell you, when I get into this crazy damn milieu of bullshit, one of the things I did was I took a deep dive into the history of it. And one of the people I followed to the nth degree was Donald Keyhoe, one of the original civilian researchers. He was a retired Marine Corps officer, an aviator, all right, an aviation authority, an aviation writer. He got basically, he was skeptical, started taking a look at these flying saucer, flying disc stories, and then he became one of the biggest proponents of trying to get congressional hearings on it. Now, this is back in the 50s. The guy went to Annapolis. A number of his military classmates, including Roscoe Hillenkotter, who became the first CIA director, were all classmates of his. And he tried to get through on the UFO real deal via his military contacts. Never happened. And you know who he attributed with totally shutting him down? The Central Intelligence Agency, okay, the CIA. And when did they come into existence? They came into existence several weeks after the Roswell event. They became a separate intelligence agency and took over basically from the old OSS of World War II. Guys, we got to take our break now, but hey, ladies and gentlemen, we'll be back. We got a lot more coming. Stick around.
From Iraq and Afghanistan, our brave warriors are coming home, wounded. Some with wounds you can see, some with wounds you can't see. Wounded Warrior Project was created to support our men and women coming off the battlefield. Please help carry these warriors the rest of the way home. Get involved at woundedwarriorproject.org.
MUFON is the voice of thousands of like-minded people who want to see change. We speak up against UFO secrecy. We engage governments and agencies around the world on the topic. We share information with the public through our journal, website, newsletter, social media, and even our own TV channel. When you join MUFON, you add your voice to the cause. Few things are more important in our time than understanding the UFO question. Join MUFON. Find your friends.
Here we are at the tippy top of hour number 2. Gerry, Mark, Chris said something very interesting about people that actually believe we are living within the Matrix.
Yeah.
Now, of course, I haven't run into Neo yet, but Mark, what are your thoughts about that? Do you does your thinking go anywhere in that direction?
No, I don't bother with this stuff in general, Don. I mean, it's interesting, right? It's interesting. I could go take a rip off my bong and think about it for a while. But you know, there's just so much happy horse shit out there. I don't know really what's true or what's not. We just had the whistleblower guy come out, and much like the green eggs and ham guy saying that he got a thrill up his leg and started crying and stuff when he did his thing. And look, maybe he did. I don't know. But we have this new guy saying that, we're only being told what we're being told. He didn't use the term matrix exactly, but that's what he meant. And he's talking about all that. Oh, and God is real and such. And it's like, how does this further along? Let's use the term disclosure. How does this further it along? It doesn't, much like when Lou shares another photo and says, oh, I didn't have any heat in this, in the meeting. So here's a photo I didn't have a chance to do anything with, but now I'm important for 5 minutes. And then Mick West and those guys go out and blow it out of the water again. So I think there's more nuts and bolts things to do, Don. My view of ufology at the moment, especially with these new people, is that I've been at this as long as Don. And a lot of these cases were never finished correctly, weren't researched correctly, et cetera, et cetera. And we have all these new people who base a lot of their beliefs on this unfinished research from the past, right? And it's like, come on. Is anybody going to try to put a bow on that stuff as best as we can? Well, Chris knows a guy. Chris could say, let's try to put a bow on, I don't know, let's see what it says about Roswell and see what it can pull out that maybe Don doesn't know, or maybe some thinking process that Don never hooked up about Roswell or STS or Phobos or any of this stuff, right? Now, I'm not saying it's an answer, but if it's that smart that it can go into Don's thing and find stuff that's like, Don's kind of like, I'm not so sure about this. Not saying that it's phony, but it's interesting. Why not do that? Because we're in such a shit show now. I talked to Wolf about it and I said, actually, why bother at this point? Because we got green eggs and ham guy and Lou and this new guy about the Matrix and all this. It's getting so screwed up, and this Colthorpe guy, it's just completely going down the tubes, worse than it's ever been.
Mark,
Gerry, well, wait a minute. I want to get Gary's take. Do you think we're in a Matrix?
No. If this was the Matrix, it would be a lot cooler. There'd be a lot better stuff. And Windows wouldn't keep crashing. It's just illogical to write a program that a computer keeps crashing within the program. It's weird. No, I don't feel
Gerry,
that way.
you went muted.
It's always neat. Oh.
No, I can hear him.
I hear him, but I think he may need to turn it up just a little bit.
Okay, let me look at it real quick.
It might be Chris. He may have had some
Oh,
sort
Chris
of
just
problem.
crashed out. Yeah. Where'd
Right.
he go?
I'm sure he'll be back.
Yeah.
He went into the Matrix to take a rip. He's gonna take a rip off his bong and come back.
That'll teach him to talk about it.
That's right. That's right. And Don, if let's say this guy that you've met that Chris knows, you started to ask him like, here's a case and here's a case and here's a case, and just give me back the data. What sort, in general, your knee-jerk reaction to where if you asked him to look at STS and it came up with some stuff that either blew your mind or, you know, made you think maybe a little differently, would you use that information, or would you just like add that to the gray basket?
It would depend on what the information was. Look, I am not one of those people that is so set in my beliefs that if something pops up and challenges them, that I won't reconsider a reconsideration. Okay.
Right.
That's what makes a good investigator.
Right. But
or so I've been told.
Right. But this is a little different, that it's not coming from regular sources for the first time in humanity. It's not coming.
Well, it would, like I said, Mark, it would depend upon what in what area, what specifically that information would be, the data. I don't know. It's a hypothetical, and I kind of hesitate to jump into hypotheticals.
Yeah, I don't know if it's hypothetical, because just like I saw on YouTube, if you're clever on how you ask Chat GPT and the other one questions, you can get it to lie to you specifically and make stuff up. So I'm kind of the mind.
Well, that's a very troubling aspect of this.
Right. So then if you asked it to look at the Arizona lights and the other thing that went on that night, would it be worth the time even to try to go through it with a comb and try to pull stuff out, knowing that there could be shenanigans here? It's problematic.
Yeah.
I got lost here for a second, but I just wanted to piggyback on what Mark is saying. Mark, I agree with you. And I think one of the things in ufology, I would just want to go back to your answer, what you were talking about with the Matrix and everything else. Ufology was becoming an actual study. People weren't making money off of it. They did it for the love of trying to find out the question. Ufology is now becoming entertainment.
Oh, yeah.
We start seeing, and when you start putting entertainment to a study like this, people are going to try to get the bigger and better story all the way around. And this is why some of this stuff that's coming out by whistleblowers or other people, you kind of say to yourself, what? He's saying what? And this is where one wants to top the other. We saw that with guys who said, I was a space fighter and I was a super soldier and I went after the blue chicken and,
Corey Good.
Yeah, well, I didn't want to say his name, but there we go. But there's no indication that any of this happened. And this is the problem. We are now looking at people who are taking ufology to entertainment, and it's really ruining the field.
Absolutely.
Well, I'll tell you guys a little something, and it does not reflect well on MUFON. But back in about 1991, 92, I did a major investigation on somebody that had been popping in and out of the UFO field for years. First time I ever encountered this guy was in Timothy Good's book, his first edition, Above Top Secret. The man's name, excuse me, the man's name in the book was Mel Noel. Guy Kirkwood, Noel Bryce Cornwall. Now, his real name was Noel Bryce Cornwall. In Timothy Good's book, it was Mel Noel. And when I met him, it was Guy Kirkwood. Now, who the hell was that? Well, this was a guy that from the late 50s through the 60s claimed to be a former U.S. Air Force pilot. Specifically, he flew F-86 Sabre jets, all right? And his story was long and vast. But to condense it down, he claimed to have been based in a secret Air Force facility in Utah in the 50s, and they would send his squadron up to hunt UFOs when they popped up on radar, to photograph them, chase them, all this kind of business. Well, along about the late 60s, okay, a guy that I later met, his name was Don Dornan, was a Look magazine reporter and photographer. And how did I happen to run into him? Well, back in the 60s, we later on had a congressman here in Southern California by the name of Bob Dornan. And Bob Dornan had been a Super Sabre pilot for real, okay, bona fide, verified, the whole schmear. And he was very prominent in his work as a congressman, getting the B-1 bomber financed. Ergo, his nickname, B-1 bomber Bob Dornan. Now, I met Kirkwood down in San Diego at a UFO thing. And I got to tell you, the guy charmed me. He was charming, friendly, seemingly open, a raconteur. He could spin a story like you couldn't believe. And I said, well, gee whiz. And I knew nothing about this guy. I said, gee whiz, Guy, I'd love to do an article on you for UFO Magazine. Look, here's all I'm asking. Come on out to the offices, bring me a copy of your military discharge papers, your DD 214. Okay, Don, no problem. Well, a year came and went. Never heard more from him. Then one night, okay, my phone at home starts ringing off the hook. And I answered it, and it was at the time, a very well-known Bailey, excuse me a second. Bailey is getting into little Joey's, Bailey's getting into little Joey's food bowl. So anyway, Fritz Krohn called me up. He had just seen Guy Kirkwood on one of those 5-night-a-week strip shows doing UFO stuff with Linda Moulton Howe. And boy, did he fill my head about this guy was a BS artist from the get-go, going back to the 60s. In the 60s, he had been exposed, blah, blah, blah. But by this time, okay, close to 25, almost 30 years had passed. So Guy resurfaced. Well, I said, well, that's interesting. I'm going to investigate him. Well, I did, and I did a deep dive, and I ended up finding out about this incident that happened in the 60s where Look magazine, which at the time was a huge, big periodical, okay, was doing a story on this guy and some other people. So I tracked down where Dornan was, called him up, told him who I was. We met for lunch, and he brought me out a briefcase filled with photographs and documents from this thing that he had been involved in back in the 60s. Well, boy, that really gave me a place to jump into it. And ultimately, okay, I had the article ready to go. quotes, documents, photographs, you name it, I had it. So I called Guy Kirkwood up and I said, Guy, I've got this expose on you ready to go. Now, I'm inviting you to come out. I will let you take a look at it before we go to print. And all you have to do is bring me out your DD-214 to show me you were a pilot, and I'll axe the thing right there. Well, I got to give him credit for one thing. He showed up and came in, no DD-214. He read my article, looked at the photographs, then he got up without saying a word, walked out the door. Well, I ran it. Well, let me tell you what. Then I got hate from various corners of the UFO field because Guy was such a great guy. One of the guys that attacked me was a UFO researcher by the name of Bill Hamilton. Okay. And we at that time, the UFO field, had a UFO BBS service coming out of Canada. All right. Run by a fellow by the name of Earl Bruce Knapp. Now, Earl has since passed on. But at that time, that was the place to go. And Hamilton went up there and attacked me. Well, it took me 3, maybe even 4 times confronting him to find out what his beef was. Where did I go wrong? Well, I finally backed him into a corner and he said, well, you got his middle name wrong. That was his proof that I screwed up the expose. And I told him, I said, Jesus, Bill, I said, for God's sakes, with a guy with that many names, how the hell would you know if you got something wrong? But I didn't, okay? I didn't get it wrong. Well, you know, some people you can lead that horse to the water creek, but if he don't want to drink, he won't. So about 2-3 years later, L.A. MUFON, right here in sunny Southern California, I get a call at UFO Magazine. Don, you're not going to believe it. What? Guess who L.A. MUFON's having come in and give a lecture? Who? Guy Kirkwood. And I said, you got to be kidding me. So I called up the L.A. MUFON guy, who at that time was a man by the name of Don Waldrop, who later moved to Florida. And I believe he later on, I believe he passed. But anyway, I got him on the phone. And his line was, well, we got to get paying people to fill the seats to keep MUFON going. In other words, we will sell our integrity for $10 an ass to fill our chairs. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is scientific ufology in a nutshell.
I talked to Wolf about that back in the old days, and it had to do with you, Don. And I asked him, this was during the alien autopsy stuff, and I put in a lot of time on that. And Wolf was honest, and he said, look, they don't want Don. They don't want you. They want Michael Horn to talk about Palladians and show cool videos, right? And that's what they want. They want cool stories. They want engagement, and they want to sell the tickets. And
they want the fantasy and not reality.
And well, as a company, I understand that, right? Because if you're not going to do this for free, because I do events and stuff at my house, and I don't charge a cent. And it's like, well, I'm doing it because I want to do it and maybe make a difference and blah, 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 blah. But that's not why they're there. They're there because they got to pay the church or wherever they were having it at that point. They have a bottom line. Even if it's not a very big bottom line, they still have to meet that bottom line. So, yeah. And don't we see that everywhere now? Don't we see it everywhere where we want to see green eggs and ham, and we want to talk about the Matrix, and we want to do all this other stuff, while flat earth people say that every one of Musk's attempts to get through the firmament which is the clear dome above Earth, has made them explode. And any of them that don't explode are CGI.
Hey, Mark Center.
Entertainment,
The
baby.
freaking Earth is flat. All right, it's flat.
All I got to say is, if the Earth was flat, there would be nothing here because all the cats would have knocked it off the edge.
Yes, yes. And one I heard was that if the Earth was flat and there's a bunch of ice around the edge, the Red Bull would have already gone there and done some kind of a stunt and jumped off the edge.
Right.
And I agree with that. I completely agree with it. So do we think that properly used AI, which is a mouthful, could be used to sort some of this stuff out, both historically and currently? Do we think?
Well, this is something that just got brought up in a group that I'm in, that history is potentially being rewritten by AI. And we have to be cautious how much AI we allow to be published, because of the fact that they are rewriting actual history.
I'm more worried about if they alter our history. AI begins to alter our history, to put it in a different direction that we want it to go into. I mean, this is the thing that bothers me about artificial intelligence, is that we're going to depend on it so much that do we become slaves to that?
Well, that's one thing that Elon Musk was talking about, that so many jobs are going to be redundant because of AI.
Well, take your stuff like, for instance, doctors. You go to a specialist, to a doctor, and you hope the doctor has enough knowledge and gains enough experience that whatever you have wrong with you, he can diagnose and knows how to treat.
Right.
Now you bring AI into it, and the doctor goes, hey, I don't have to study anymore. I don't have to learn new techniques. I don't have to do this, because AI will now do the stuff that I had to put my mind to it.
You're talking about idiocracy right now.
I'm talking about some very scary stuff, because
look how stupid society becomes because of everything is done for us in that movie.
So
I thought that was actually clever.
Aren't we already there? And now I don't know anything about this, to be honest, but aren't we kind of already there when they fly by the stick jets and stuff like that, where you can put basically anybody there and it's flying all by itself and you have your little joystick there? Is that an example of old school technology that will then be sort of taken over by the AI brain, then, where you just, okay, let's take off, let's land?
Yeah, I mean, that's a concern. Mankind won't be able to, or won't want to learn, to gain knowledge, to use our own minds to create, and to learn, and to be able to build. And we'll become, I really truly believe that we will become slaves to AI in the near future. Yeah, exactly. I mean, years ago, we didn't have that stuff to be able to tell us. We had to decipher it ourselves. We had to use payphones or go to a house and use a telephone. Now we have computer systems that are just like the people who landed on the moon. The computer systems in our cell phones are just as powerful as what we had with the astronauts.
No, it's more powerful by magnitudes than than what the original Apollo 11 computer was.
Yeah, they basically had a computer that was equivalent to a 10-key calculator by Texas.
So where would it go? Where if you have, the boomers and after us, I'll go to YouTube, and while I know how to fix a lot of a dryer, I'll still go up there because somebody will have a better idea, right? So I'll go to YouTube and go, oh, wow, I never thought that you could do this and this and this to make it easier for me to fix this thing. Well, a lot of younger people don't want to fix anything, don't know how, they didn't take it in shop, et cetera, et cetera. So I wonder where it's going to go, where a lot of this mechanical labor is not going to have anybody to farm it out to necessarily, right? And you're going to have to either wait for months to get one of the chosen people who decided to learn how to do this, however they learned how to do it. But we are lazy, and the cell phones are making us lazier and lazier. So in 30 or 40 years, if you have your washer and refrigerator and all this stuff and it needs work on it, I wonder who's going to be doing that. Because a lot, the younger kids aren't learning how to do this. And even if they went to YouTube, they wouldn't understand it. I saw the new, what's that film where the people think they're going to die and they see the premonition and then they end up to die. It's a brand new one.
It's a whole IP. I know the film you're doing.
Right. So I go see that great scene in there, Don, where it takes place in the 90s. And they need to make a phone call, and there's a rotary phone, and they're like, and they don't know how to use the rotary phone, which is a great analogy of where we're going with all of this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, they're talking about
if you were to walk down to your local tattoo parlor and find some youngsters in there getting their first, second, third, or 15th tattoo, and you ask them, well, do you know what Betamax is?
Well, yeah.
It was the greatest video format that never took off. It's better than VHS.
We're talking about bigger picture items here where many young people can't change a tire. Right. They
can't open a can, don't know how to use a can.
Right. So in 30 or 40 years with AI and all that and Uber and food delivered and all that, it is very concerning that when here's what people say to me about the shot, and those in charge want to kill off millions of people, right? That's what they want to do. And I look at that and I say, well, wait a minute. If they kill off millions or billions of people, then who's going to take care of the sewer and the water and the cooking for the people who are left, right? And it's very interesting. Could we use AI, Don, to look into the new claim that they've spent trillions of dollars building cities under the ocean, not in the water, but under the ocean, where I personally think we don't even have the technology to do something like that. And yet they've come clean, some woman, and Tucker Carlson said, I met a guy who worked on those.
Well, she actually knew about them because she was working with a government agency. But I will tell you this, and this is why I believe that those underground bases are real. I worked with a police officer whose wife was a nurse. I believe she was a nurse that worked on a military base. And she had a number that was on her ID card. And from what I understand from my friend, that if she got a certain call, she was to respond to that base, and she would be transported to an underground base where she would survive. They had this back years ago when they thought nuclear war was very, very much going to happen in somewhere respect, that they wanted to keep, people safe, but they couldn't get everybody safe. So they had a select a bunch of people that were given. Now, this is a police officer who has no reason to lie to me. I mean, we were very much good friends, and the conversation wasn't anything but, oh yeah, but we were talking about this, and yeah, my wife does this and stuff like that. And I just sat there shocked. And this was back in the 80s. So
well, she would have been considered a national security asset. What exactly did she do?
She was a nurse.
Did she specialize?
She was just a regular nurse from what I understand.
Well, they're going to need a certain contingent of nursing. But my question is this. I do believe that there's underground bases.
Absolutely.
However, do you think we have the technology to go, underground in the ocean and gain access to those for hundreds of thousands of people, much like Lear said on the moon. There's 50 million people who are living on the dark side of the moon. It's that kind of thinking.
No,
I don't think we have the technology to go down, I don't know, hundreds of feet or a mile in the ocean and then do all of this work underneath the bottom of the ocean and build all this stuff.
I don't see where you can. Well, Mark, I just don't know, because here's what just came out not that long ago with the director of science and technology for the White House. What did he just say? And
we have the ability to manage and manipulate time and space.
Right. And then what did he say? He says distance is now annihilated. We can annihilate distance.
Right. And that's an interesting thing to say. And then what's been the media response to this? Nothing.
Silence. Nothing. Of course.
But
because they cannot talk about anything by this sitting president in a positive way. Oh, this is fascinating. What kind of, are we talking about folding space? What are we talking about here? Are we talking about tearing a fabric in time and space itself and moving through that? What are we talking about? Because this is serious shit. And nobody's talking about it.
But could it be something as simple as a troll? Because especially this administration,
is he trolling them?
Off. They're trolling constantly. So since independent journalists don't even seem to be interested in that statement, it made big waves at first, and then crickets. Gone.
Hey, it's just like when David Grush was testifying at Congress. And Chris and I have talked about this a dozen times.
Murders.
And he was asked, has anybody ever been killed in the pursuit of this? Yes. Not one follow-up question. Not one.
Right.
In other words, in pursuit of the UFO UAP phenomena, people have died, have been murdered. Murdered. And, I had, as a matter of fact, just this past weekend, I had somebody ask me about my disclosure document. And I had put in there about the National Security Act. See, three things happened immediately following Roswell. The Army Air Force was ripped away from the Army, became the U.S. Air Force. The Central Intelligence Agency came into existence. And I'm talking about just weeks after Roswell. And signed into law the National Security Act, which basically said in the event of an imminent threat to the Republic, if this act is invoked, the Republic goes away. Anything including extra legal issues can be done. Now, what do I mean by extra legal? Premeditated murder. If somebody is deemed a threat to national security under that act, they can take that guy out and it's perfectly legal. Now, what's that tell you? They're serious.
Yeah.
They're serious.
Well, right, but how serious are they then? Then it's all smoke and mirrors in Congress. They bring up Grush and all these other people. They're talking about all this happy horse shit. Nothing happens. All these new stories come out, and it's like, so what are we to make of this?
Can I ask you a question, Mark? Why hasn't Hal Puthoff been subpoenaed to go in front of Congress? Why hasn't Eric Davis been subpoenaed?
I have my own issues with Hal and Scientology that I won't discuss here.
I understand, but he's been proven. What's the other guy? Russell Tarr?
Yeah.
Russell Tarr, Hal Puthoff. None of these guys have ever spoken in Congress. Now, whether you agree with Hal or not, you know that some of the stuff he's worked on has actually worked. He's worked with Pat Price. He's worked with Ingo Swann. He's worked with this one on the Stargate program. Now, the thing is, you got Eric Davis. You got others, scientists, Russell Tarr is another one. You got these scientists that have never talked in front of Congress.
Yeah, I don't have an answer there. I would ask Hal this. Hey Hal, you're a believer in remote viewing. I'm not saying it's not real. I'm not saying it's, I don't know, but he's got a background in that. Hey Hal, why don't you go do some simple scientific tests and not align yourself with the government or anybody else and prove it? Go ahead. It ain't that hard, Hal. It ain't that hard. And yet they're unwilling to do this.
Well, I don't see Congress going saying, hey, you're going to be subpoenaed to come in front of Congress. You know what, Kit Green, you're going to be subpoenaed to come in front of Congress. Travis Taylor, you're going to come and speak in front of Congress, and we're going to pick your brains of this stuff that you worked on. Not any scientists. They bring up two guys who were in intelligence, one with the naval intelligence at one meeting. I laughed so hard when he said, we don't have the technology to blow up this picture or to stop it to get a good picture. But we got satellites that can read license plates, but here in Congress, we don't have the technology to make this picture clearer or whatever. That's garbage and stuff.
Again, what if they were called to Congress based on what you've already seen? Do you really think they're gonna do any good? Really?
It's better than hearing from people who said, I talked to this guy who said he saw a picture, and I talked to this guy who claims he was over at this crash.
Right.
That's all third hand. I wanted the people who are directly involved. I don't want to hear somebody say, geez, I talked to so-and-so, and so-and-so said he read this document. I want the person who made the document.
So if it's covered in an SAP, they can't. Okay, even if you're a whistleblower, if you believe what Don, his
right, but you can go into a skiff and tell these people from Congress.
Oh, you mean like Greer? I'm just saying. Greer gets called out to black sites every other Saturday, and he's called into skiffs every other Monday. So, see, if you really want to make push this forward, I talked to I forget his name, Don's friend, who's the rocket guy.
Brandenburg?
Right. I talked to him and I said, why do we need the CIA's involvement or Congress's involvement or any of these people's involvement on some of this stuff? We don't. Do it yourself.
Right. You make a valid point on that.
Do it yourself. Putov could do it himself. And yet they don't.
And that's the $1 million mystery, Mark, because you're right about that. Why don't they do it themselves? Why doesn't these people come out? Or have they been threatened? Or have they been told that you can never release this? Or is it so diabolical and nefarious that they know that they can't release it?
Well, right. But when you're talking about remote viewing, it's already out there. That stuff is already out there. So they're not being told to shut up about that. So set up a proper test and prove it. Prove it. I don't need to hear what somebody says about Mars 1 million years ago. I need to know that you can find a toy Pee Wee Herman doll in Newark, New Jersey, and another guy in Washington and another guy in Texas. So come on, do it.
Okay, why aren't they doing it? So
I have no clue.
And that's the problem. We don't have a clue because all these scientists shut up. They're not coming out themselves, and nobody in Congress wants to hear from them. And that's why I think Don's paper is right on the money that we're never going to see disclosure. There's certain things, even with remote viewing, they're not going to tell you because they got such fine secrets, and maybe some nefarious, and maybe some people died over it, that they can't let it out.
Okay, it's just very interesting that let's say not even Putov, just a regular person says, you know what, I'm going to set up this test. and here's what the protocols are. Let's find out what happens. It's very interesting that the nuts and bolts don't seem to be done on a lot of this stuff.
Well, here's the other thing, and it's not often discussed, but I'm going to give you a section from the government playbook. Okay. And that section reads like this: they depend mightily on the passage of time and people. You know, there was a time 25, 30 years ago when Colonel Gordon Cooper, one of the original Mercury 7 astronauts, was alive and talking. Cooper went before the United Nations talking about UFO situations. A lot of stuff there. But what happened? Cooper passed on. Today, people don't even mention his name. Donald Keyhoe, okay? At one point, he was the name when it came to UFO research. He was the guy. Gone since 86. Nobody even remembers who he was. Ivan Sanderson, a British military intelligence guy that got involved in the UFO and cryptid aspect of things, wrote books on it. Dead for decades. Nobody remembers who he was. Stanton Friedman. When's the last time you heard anybody mention Stan Friedman, who died a few years ago? Okay. I mean, they depend on the passage of time. Who are these new people today? David Grush, where the hell's he? Lou Elizondo. Every podcast with an audience of at least 12 or 13 people, he's there. Not here, but he's there. How about these other people? Christopher Mellon. What the hell's he done recently? You see what I'm saying? It comes and it goes. And you can boil it all down into one phrase: a dog and pony show. If any of you guys were in the military, you know what a dog and pony show is.
Well, yeah, but all the stuff you're bringing up there is dependent on personalities. What about evidence? Not personalities.
Hey, Guy Kirkwood, who gives a shit about evidence? We love the stories.
No. I'm just saying that everything you just brought up there does have to do with the passage of time, which means that the people who are espousing the stuff are dying off.
Hey, well, the Japanese 747 incident that happened in 86 in the skies above Alaska. The guy was flying from Europe with a load. As a matter of fact, my favorite French wine, Beaujolais, a load of Beaujolais over Alaska, okay? And they encounter a UFO. Not only did the pilot and co-pilot and people on the jet see it, it's seen on FAA radar in Alaska. Describe this object as being the size of an aircraft carrier or larger.
Right.
Okay. Reagan at that time was president, Ronald Reagan. His science people were sent out to get the skinny on what the hell this was. Okay. Like everything else. Evaporated into the ether. At that time, the Gulf Breeze case was ongoing. UFOs down off of Gulf Breeze. Ed Walters and his wife. That was a huge story at the time. What happened? Evaporated. That's what I'm talking about when I say the government depends on the passage of time. People's memories dissipate.
Well,
probably most people today, okay, that have an interest in this field, were not even around then. This probably is the first time they heard about any of that.
Right.
Nobody has a firm grip on the historical reality of this field. They don't know. They don't want to know.
Well, they're also hopeful that an inexplicable happening won't happen that blows it all up, right? They're hoping on that. Please don't let them, as they say, land on the White House lawn or, Independence Day type thing in front of us all and blah, 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 blah. So.
And Mark, you brought up a good point that I'm thinking about is why aren't we seeing private scientific experiments, and why aren't we getting results from these people? And I think that would have to be the way to go, because right now, not too many people trust the government.
No.
I mean, do you really? I mean, look what's coming out now about Joe Biden and
I know.
Right? I mean,
yeah.
I mean, it doesn't take a scientist to figure out that, okay, we've been lied to. I mean, you could see the double talking all the time.
Well, for those people that don't know it, there is no human being on the planet that is moderated more carefully than the president of the United States.
Yep.
Exactly.
His health, his mental acuity, et cetera, et cetera. And the idea that this cancer in his prostate just suddenly popped up in the last few months is total bullshit.
Well, yeah.
They had to know about this for years because, according to what they said, it metastasized.
It takes 10 years.
Metastasized into his pelvis.
I've got personal experience in this, and when my PSA went up to 0.2, I was called in. 0.2, right? And that there was just a regular blood test for other things. And, we looked into it and they said, well, you're 50. You're a little young for this, but we're going to take away your prostate and your sex life. Have a nice life. So for them to say this, not to get into the politics too much, but it looked to me to be they were looking for a opportunity to let this out, like a little safe zone, but then those hair tapes got released and he's very sick. When it's a Gleason 9, I'm sorry, the clock stopped ticking. So yeah, we're just being screwed with here. So
I think Gerry was just saying that it takes 10 years to move into the bones. 9 months ago, he was given an all clear. He was in great health. The president is just top of his game. He's running circles around everybody.
Right.
And this just goes to say, it's all bullshit that we hear from the government when it comes to ufology, because they can't be. They have the lowest rating of credibility that they've ever had in Congress. And so they're useless as far as I'm concerned in this ufology field.
Right. That's why I say that the Congress thing and all, it's a dog and pony. Who cares? I mean, an interesting example is this. When you have Skinwalker Ranch with all the history there and 2 multi-millionaires who own the thing, who can do actual tests, and the first guy never releases his stuff, from the best of what I know. The second guy turns it into this stupid freaking show where it's completely inconsistent and, all over the map of the bullshit that they're doing there. There's a good example of what the problem is. If they actually wanted to do research and science there, Chris, they could. They have the money. They have the money to do the research there, and yet they don't want to do that. They don't want to do that.
Because they're making money.
Right, but the guy who owns it doesn't need to make the money. It's more for ego there, because he doesn't need that money. So then if we have like Putoff and these guys, what's stopping them from doing a similar thing to what the bass player did from the band? And now that all blew up, of course. What's stopping those guys from putting something similar but based in science and doing it correctly? And if they were getting into areas that they couldn't get into. Are you
referring to Unidentified that was on the History Channel?
Well, associated. The
Tom DeLonge and
right.
Academy to the Stars.
Doing something like that.
Do you really think that it was just something that DeLonge decided one day?
No.
I'm going to see if I can get some government people that were involved in that was put together
Well,
from the
right.
get-go.
I'm using that as the example of maybe some people who could be trusted more of putting something similar together with the right thinking involved here and an outcome that we would hope that they would get to. And if it got into SAPs, right, that you would be smart enough with smart enough people there where maybe you could skirt around the issues and stuff with that, because we already have a guy in front of Congress saying people are getting murdered. Crickets. So how strong is the SAP? I don't know. I assume it's very strong, but not strong enough to keep a guy from saying on TV, people are being murdered because of this, and there's no follow-up. Oh, we need to go into a skiff with Greer, and we can tell you. Come on.
Yeah. And the thing is that I'm sure that these guys, when they start working for the government, they're signing non-disclosures. They're being told that anything that you put out there has to be verified and checked with us, or you're going to go to jail. And so they win every way. This has become, I hate to say it, but ufology has become a big entertainment show. We've created movies around ufology. We've created television shows. We've created all kinds of other stuff where serious ufology investigations have gone right down the crapper, as far as I'm concerned.
And you're surprised?
No, I'm not surprised.
Well, again, but we could have a step in the right direction with remote viewing. That's, some people with a little bit of money could actually try to come up with some usable information there, repeatable information there, right?
All through our history.
You can't do science without being able to repeat things.
Well, right.
You can't get a repeat. It's you don't know what you're dealing with, and you can't prove anything. Right. It's all theoretical until somewhat proven.
So, are we in a matrix? I don't give a shit. I got a life. I got stuff to do.
My life sucks, and it will end, and it won't matter.
I got a bunch of movies to watch. I got good food to track down. I mean, I got girls at the beach to stare at. I got all this other stuff to do. How is the Matrix affecting me? I don't know. Did it take my prostate? Maybe. I don't know.
Maybe. Well, all I know is if we can create an organization for oversight, we need to create one called the IMWP, which ensures that for every episode of this show, that Mark is wearing pants.
Yes.
Well, I'm glad you didn't say anything to me.
Okay, I kind of missed that one. I kind of missed that one. I'm kind of glad about
anyway, it looks like we got a minute, Don, so let's check out.
Actually, less than a minute. Chris, this has been great, buddy. What do you got coming up?
Say that again?
What do you got coming up?
Oh, we're going to do mental health via all the cops that are committing suicide. So we're really going to do a 3-part series because people, of course, nobody wants to know about it, but several police officers.
Very important stuff, man. This is all on the left for doing this, too. Yeah. They are the ones who helped cause this.
Yep.
Okay, gang. Well, that is basically it for this week. As always, Gerry, Mark, thank you guys so much. And audience, hang in there. We promise to keep banging on this door until we see it either going to open or they're going to drop a big rock on us. Either way, we should be around. Chris, thank you so much. And remember Thursday, UAP Crossfire, beginning at 5 p.m.
Nick Pope.
Pacific, 8 Eastern time. Yeah, Nick Pope is going to grace us with a whole hour on our 2-hour show. We'll see you then.
God bless Sam and Dean Winchester.
Live long and prosper.